How fucked are y'all? Oh boy. The only chance y'all had of beating UGA was us continuing to play these not very talented quarterbacks, right? Like Stetson Bennett. Now, you couldn't beat Stetson Bennett, but you had a chance to, in theory. Some teams did. If Georgia starts getting and actually playing these NFL talented quarterbacks, it's just completely over for the rest of college football. Georgia might win 7 natties in a row. About to win our third one this year with Carson Beck. We'll win one next year with whoever, Brock Vandergrift, Gunnar Stockton, or Dylan Raiola is a true freshman. Dylan Raiola will win a couple while he's there. This is unprecedented. If I can be serious for a second, though, about the Dylan Raiola thing, I don't follow recruiting all that closely. Now, I keep up with the big names, whether they're Georgia commits or not, and sort of the stuff that makes the big news. Like, I mean, unless you were living under a rock, you knew about Arch Manning's recruitment last year, right? Dylan Raiola, not as hyped up as that because it doesn't have the last name, but, somebody that's been talked about for a while. He was committed to Ohio State, then he decommitted, and people thought, it's coming down to Georgia, Nebraska, and Southern Cal. So you couldn't help but kind of follow this recruitment a little bit. And honestly, this has to be the worst kept secret, or one of the worst kept secrets in the history of recruiting. Because even though I barely follow recruiting, even I knew Dylan Raiola has been committed to UGA for a couple of weeks now. It was a silent commitment. It was like a secret that wasn't a secret. Pretty much the only people that wouldn't come out and say that Dylan Raiola was committed were the professional sports writers who follow the team, and they're not allowed to say things that are off the record because they don't want to lose the access they have. But everybody has known Raiola has been committed to Georgia for several weeks now. And again, being serious for a second, number one, being committed to a team in May does not mean that you will ultimately sign with a team and enroll at that school. I get that. Obviously, this isn't the first time Dylan Raiola has been committed to a school, right? He was committed to Ohio State, like we mentioned. So is it exciting to sign a five-star quarterback, the number one ranked quarterback in the class, the number one player in the 24 class overall? Yes, it's exciting to get a commitment from a kid like that. I'll be even more excited in December when he actually commits. And to some of the haters and the type of trolls will say, well, it doesn't matter, Kirby won't play him. You might be right. I mean, that is definitely what's happened in the past, right? Well, I mean, the list of five-star quarterbacks that Kirby has ran off in favor for less talented starting QBs named Jake Fromm and Stetson Bennett is pretty long. But here's the thing. As long as Dylan Raiola is wearing a Georgia helmet, whether he's starting or not, he's not starting for anybody else. So, Georgia's guaranteed not to lose any games to Dylan Raiola if he signs with Georgia, right? Unless he were to transfer out later. But the real reason this excites me, and this has nothing to do with the quarterback play on the field or with who actually ends up playing quarterback, whether it is Dylan Raiola or someone else. When you sign one of these big name guys, and this one in particular, there's a couple of players who had pretty much straight up said this is going to come with other goodies. Dylan Raiola is the type of recruit that is going to bring other players with him. And in this case, it's going to be the type of player that Georgia has had a hard time landing. As good as Georgia has recruited, as good as Kirby has recruited, they've really only signed one true elite wide receiver, one NFL talent type wide receiver, and that was George Pickens. And while I love George Pickens and he was great when he played at Georgia, and it looks like he's going to do great in the NFL, it was disappointing with his injuries, and he really didn't play that much as last year. But there's no denying his talent. But that's really the only legitimate wide receiver one. That's nothing against the Georgia's current receivers. Marcus Rosemary, Jack Saint is he's not an average receiver. If you're as old as I am and you're a Georgia fan, you remember this name, Michael Bennett. He was a wide receiver that Georgia had back in the mid-2000s, it seems like, 15 or so years ago maybe. Wasn't the tallest guy, wasn't the fastest guy, wasn't the strongest guy, but he ran great routes. He seemed to always be in the right place at the right time, and if the ball was thrown anywhere near him, he found a way to catch it. A possession receiver. Marcus is Rosemary Jack saying is that Lad McConkey, great, but he's a slot receiver, right? He's a slot receiver. Brock Bowers, great, but he's a tight end. George Pickens is definitely the only true wide receiver one that has come through Georgia since Kirby has been there. He's had a hard time getting the elite wide receiver recruits to come to Georgia. It's a lot of 4 stars, right? A lot of 3 stars in the case of Lad McConkey. Dylan Raiola is going to bring at least 1 5-star. It's possible Georgia ends up signing now 2 5-star wide receivers in this class coming up, which would be amazing. Amazing. And I'm talking true, like, potential NFL wide receiver 1 type guys. 6'1" plus, 180 to 220. Just the typical what you see in the NFL from a wide receiver 1. Blazing speed, tall, can jump, good hands, wingspan, runs good routes. The total package. Everything that really makes up a truly elite NFL wide receiver. Those are your 5-star wide receiver 1s, right? I love, like I said, I love Lad McConkey. I love Miko Hardman. Loved Isaiah McKenzie. Before that, Dominic Lovett, who Georgia has this year from Mizzou. These are all slot receivers, okay? These aren't wide receiver 1s. Georgia really didn't have a wide receiver 1. We did A.D. Mitchell, and even he's not like a George Pickens level, right? I think A.D. Mitchell's a great receiver and will have a career in the NFL. He's not going to be Jerry Rice or Randy Moss, or he's not. It's just not what he is. He's a wide receiver 2 type of guy. So that's more important to me with the Raiola commitment than even Raiola himself, I think. Hanging on to Raiola, getting the commitment, hanging on to him now through signing day, get him to actually sign and enroll is going to be huge in the boost that it gives in recruiting in other positions, mainly wide receiver. I thought for a while Georgia would have the number 1 recruiting class for next cycle, mainly because this year's class of high school athletes in the state of Georgia is so good. There are so many. Georgia, the state of Georgia has been an elite recruiting ground for the better part of a decade now, but this year in particular is a great class of high school seniors coming out within the state of Georgia. A lot of 5 stars, a lot of highly rated 4 stars. So there was always a really good chance that Georgia was going to end up with the number 1 class for 2024. Adding Raiola, I think, pretty much solidifies that. I didn't look at the rankings before I made this video. I don't know how the rankings will change or update based on adding Raiola. It's just my thinking that when it's all said and done at the end of this cycle, Georgia will have the number one class. So this is huge. Shout out to Kirby and company for landing Raiola, or at least getting his commitment for now in May. Like I said, we'll see if it sticks. I think it will. I think Raiola will stick with Georgia and end up signing in December, early enrolling, the whole deal. And to the rest of the college football world, damn, y'all better start drawing straws for second place. I don't know what else to tell you. Have a great day.